Embrace the world around you and develop a love for yourself with Simple Soul Creating You. Amy Holst and Tasha Fritz cut through this crazy life with humorous personal stories, research, and practical tips in an effort to simplify life and help empower you to become connected to your real thoughts and feelings. Love your simple soul.
Hey guys, welcome back. It's Tasha.
And it's Amy.
I hope that you have been well. We have had a wonderful couple of weeks.
Yes, we have.
So we're excited to be back with you. We have been talking about this topic for a long time.
We have.
The 5 love languages.
Yep.
But before we dive into that, we need to give you an update on our no drinking January.
Yep, that we promised on our last podcast we would talk about our dry January.
Yep. So I hope you saw my Facebook post over the weekend. I made it 6 days, 6 out of 7 days. I'm good this week. So,
but we're not to the weekend yet.
Not to the weekend yet, and I'm gonna own it. I will be enjoying a beverage on Saturday. My husband and I are out of town, away from the kids overnight, so
great.
We'll probably enjoy a beverage or two. But I will own that. I'll make those days up on the end. How about that?
Can you do that? Can you make up days on the end?
Make up my own rules. Whatever.
All right, good enough. Good. Yeah, I am still dry. Dry January. I like having a drink or two on the weekend. Neither one of us are huge drinkers, but we do like to have a glass of wine or a beer or a shot or
one or two.
Anyways, probably though, to be totally transparent, my saving grace was I didn't feel really great this weekend, and so I skipped a party Saturday night.
Sure.
But I did contemplate as I was trying to decide if I should just stay home and go to bed or if I should, because I am very social and like if I'm invited, I feel like I always want to go because I feel like I'm missing out.
Right.
But I was kind of bantering in my head. Can you stay dry if you go to the party? But then I felt horrible anyway, so it didn't really matter. So I stayed home.
Well, that's the thing.
Dry.
We went to a party Saturday night, or went out for supper with our very good friends, and I did a really great job all night long. And then I decided to have one drink. And I really just had one.
But that was a celebration.
Drink. It was a celebration of my husband's birthday, and a friend of ours' birthday was at midnight, and he turned the next morning. And so I had one drink, but one all night long.
Right.
I felt great the next day. I can't say they all felt the same way, but that's okay. And so there are a lot of really cool things that you get to see and experience when you're sober, and they're So anyway,
I would say too, though, not to keep talking about drinking because it's not like we're in AA having a session on drinking. But I will tell you this: I've had a lot of people come up to me that say, "Hey, I'm dry. I've been dry January." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's awesome!" Because either you listen to my podcast or that's just a thing that everybody does that I never knew about till this year. So if you are out there being dry for a month, keep it up, keep going. If you decide to have a drink at 11:40 to celebrate a birthday, and you're going to add on your days to the end of the month, which I'm not really sure how that works.
You're with me.
You can be with Tasha and make up your own rules as you go along, but that's okay.
Yeah, I think
that's okay.
It's all good.
All in moderation.
So 5 love languages.
Yeah.
We've talked about this in many of our podcasts, all the way back. I think it was podcast number 2 when we talked about EQ and IQ and how you can grow your emotional capital or your emotional intelligence, and how you can build emotional capital with people is by starting to recognize their love language and how they give and receive love.
Right.
So we just decided to dive into it because it's one that we kind of keep referring back to, and so it's a good one. First thing that we need to kind of dive into, though, before we can understand the love languages, is what is love?
Like conditional versus unconditional.
Yeah, right. And so we will refer to Gary Chapman's book on the love languages, and I have the one for children, and you've got the one for marriages, I think, in
children and marriage.
Marriage.
Both.
In your head. Yep. So in his book, he talks about what is conditional love and what is unconditional love. And then you can read all over the internet in all kinds of books and articles about these two things. But basically, for our purposes today, we're going to just talk about conditional love as love that's given when you get something in return for giving it, or love that you give when somebody performs in a way in which you want or expect them to perform. So an example Amy and I were talking about earlier is if your child does really well in a ball game, at the end of the ball game, it's like, yay, oh my goodness, you did such a great job. I'm so proud of you. And on the nights when they don't do so well, or the team doesn't do so well, if we don't congratulate them, if we don't say, hey, you played hard, if we don't acknowledge them, that would be conditional love. Like we've only showing them love when they've performed at a level in which we think is acceptable. As opposed to unconditional love, which would be, we love you no matter what. We don't always love the behaviors or the choices that you make, but we still love you. So even when they're misbehaving, letting them know and showing them love and showing them grace in those moments when they make a mistake is how you can show them the unconditional love. So I don't know, like for me, when I tuck the kids in at night, and I know you kind of have a different ritual, I always say to them, and even my little niece can repeat it with me, I always say, I love you today, tomorrow, forever and always, no matter what. Like, I love you no matter what. And so even in the tough moments when my kids are, kind of there, I will say to them, I love you no matter what. Today I love you, and tomorrow I'll love you no matter what. And it's interesting because I didn't realize it, but as I was kind of glancing back through this book, he uses the term no matter what to show unconditional love. So probably something I picked up from him many years ago and just kind of embedded it in. So unconditional and conditional love. And you may have similar definitions or slightly different definitions, but certainly we just wanted to talk through, like, what are those as we lead into the love languages.
Yeah. So I received an email from my son today, which is kind of fun because he's a 6th grader, got an iPad, and he sends me emails once in a while, sometimes just attachments that I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it, don't know what it means. But he sent me an assessment of some sort, and he got a 2 on it. So our school is standards-based education or grading. And so 2 is not mastery or proficiency, but I'm like, what's the point of sending me this? Like, I wasn't real sure because there wasn't any tag on it. So my response back, because I'm thinking about the example you gave, doesn't matter if you get an A, a B, a C, a D. If you did the best you could, like, I love that. I keep working hard. And so my response was, wow, thanks for sharing. I always love seeing your work. Looks like you are continuing to learn. Like, because really I'm thinking you're sending me a 2, which means you haven't mastered it. It's not proficiency or mastery yet, but you're learning. You're in the right progression. So I think how we interact with our kids is, I don't want my children to feel like they have to be perfect in order to get that love. And that's kind of what you're talking about with that conditional versus unconditional love. I want my kids to know that you're going to make mistakes, you're going to mess up, and I might be sad, and my feelings might be hurt, and we might talk about a poor choice or behavior, but that doesn't mean I love you less because of that behavior. I think that's really important that our kids know that. I think how hard it is to have a sense of belonging at elementary, middle school, high school. We got to make sure that they know they always belong with us.
And that they don't have to give something in return.
Yes.
Like when I show them love, and you show them love, that we're not expecting anything in return. Right? Like that's unconditional love. It's in those relationships when you love somebody, but you love them because you benefit from them in some way, right? That's conditional love. You only love them because of something they have to give back to you. Yeah. So okay. So let's dive into these love languages then.
Well, should we talk about the quiz first?
Okay, let's talk about the quiz.
So there's a quiz that you can take, and my husband and I took it years ago, and it obviously...
How's that worked out?
Well, obviously, I don't even know. I mean, I could tell you his love languages, but I don't remember... I don't remember what came out of it, so obviously we need to get the books back out. We need to do it again. But I do know what his... I do for sure know what his love language is just by who he is as a person and being with him for a long time. I can also tell you my children, and I can also tell you me. But Tasha and I took the quiz, sitting next to each other without comparing anything, and we scored.
We laughed so hard.
I wish we would have been live when we did this.
So my top love language is words of affirmation, and I knew that about myself. And then my next 2 were tied, and they were quality time and acts of service.
And I was about identical with the number off. And so we decided that we could be in a relationship together, and we would never have to touch each other, and we would never
buy gifts.
Never gifts. It would be the perfect relationship because our physical touch was low for an important thing in our relationship, and gifts were like, not, I mean, mine was a 1. So we get along really well. So we were like, this would be a great relationship. Why aren't we together?
And now I need to figure out what my husband is and maybe why we clash. Or
I
mean, we don't, but you know.
Really, truly though. I mean, you think about the conversations that you have at home that may be contentious or not. Maybe more contentious for some than others, depending upon the coping skills you have in a relationship. But I think, gosh, if you really could nail what your partner's love language would be, you really, this is my caveat to that though. And I said this to you at one point as we were reading this. Why is it always, no offense if any men are listening, but why is the woman always seeking, or a lot of times the woman seeking to figure this out? And my husband, if I were to say, find out what my love language is, he'd say, why? Why do we need it? Like, because his is obviously not words of affirmation. So, and mine is.
So I think it's important to note, and you kind of went there, that we give love in the way that we would like to receive it.
Yep.
And so I would say, too, for my husband, his is not words of affirmation. It's probably not quality time. I think it's most likely acts of service.
Yep.
So he gives me love in the way he would like to receive it, which I would have said a few years ago that my top 3 would not have included acts of service. So interesting that has maybe creeped up. And I wonder if they can change over time.
That's what we were kind of talking about.
Grow and develop and maybe just have different priorities in your life.
Yeah.
But
well, because I do think when you're newly, at least my perception, when I was newly dating in my 20s, having somebody put their arm around me in public or take your hand when you're in a social setting to kind of mark that you're mine.
Yes,
you know?
right, yeah.
I'm thinking about a cat peeing on property, mark the territory. But anyways, I think that was
possession,
more.
That ownership.
Yes, it was more important then, because then I'm like, oh, he likes me. He wants to be with me because we're at
He's
a party,
proud of
and there's
me,
other men and women there that he's trying to show that she's with me.
Right.
Now we could go to a party, and I love him, but I don't need him to show anybody.
Right.
There's no possessiveness that I'm with him.
But now if he would fold the laundry or do the dishes because he knew you were busy.
For sure.
That would be
absolutely
wonderful.
Yep.
Yeah. Agreed. Okay, so let's talk about what the 5 love languages are.
Okay.
And then we'll kind of get into, well, first, by the way, you can take the quiz, and we'll link the quiz in our notes. And it would be interesting, for you to shake out with your husband or a significant other how
and tell us, too. Maybe you could join us.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe their top 3 are the same as ours.
Maybe you'd be our best friend.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
That's right.
Okay, so 5 love languages are words of affirmation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right, so hearing compliments, saying that you're appreciated, those types of things.
Words are important.
Yes.
This is the number one way that people like to communicate. And it can be verbal, it can be written, it can be text message, it can be email. Yeah. It's the words that really matter for a relationship on this.
And the unexpected words, too, like, the you look great today or the random notes of kindness. That would be words of affirmation.
Yeah, and totally part of the words of affirmation in the book, the author really talks about be specific.
Yep.
I like how you reach out to people at church who don't seem to have anyone to talk to. Or you're really keeping up with that job search. I know it'll pay off. So I think not just saying, you look good, but what do you like about that? So words of affirmation is being specific.
Right. Quality time.
Yep.
So quality time would be spending time together, right? It's for the kids. It's playing cards or playing a board game at night. It's going to the park and playing with the dog.
Yeah.
With your spouse, it's going to, for a walk in the woods if that's what they like to do, if that's their hobby, or going to the golf.
You just hit something that I think is really important. You said going to the woods if that's their hobby. So quality time. If quality time is last on your list and it's a 1, you're going to have to figure out what your spouse would enjoy to do for that quality time. That's not your quality time. It's what their quality time is. So mine might be shopping. Steve's might be in the timber. If his number 1 was quality time and that was my least favorite, mine should be to go to the timber with him.
Right, if that's his, one of his top few.
So the quality time needs to be around what their quality time enjoyment is, not what yours is.
Right, and showing them that what they like to do is important to you.
Yeah,
that's what quality time really is.
I would agree. And the example that they gave was ask your spouse 5 activities that they would like to do. Mm-hmm. So then you have options versus if I hate going in the timber, that's not an option for me, but I have options. Other ones might be A, B, C.
Right. And it could be going out for lunch,
Could be going out to lunch,
having a cup of coffee or whatever it may be. Find out what theirs is. Receiving gifts, which came very low on both Amy and I.
Yes.
But it's those unexpected gifts or expected gifts, at the holidays, but those unexpected gifts where somebody is out and they see something in a shop that reminds them of you and they bring it to you.
And it doesn't always have to cost money.
No.
So some of the examples that they talk about are like if you're in nature, what could you find in nature? So if maybe there's a flower, if you're if you're a female and walking with a male. It could be a flower. It could be handmade. It could be bought. It could be, I mean, there's multiple things that receiving gifts can be included. I think part of this is that the underlying value is that I think you're special, so I did something for you.
Right, and it can be practical things too, like you know, going to get new shoes. That's a gift.
Given to a charity. Your spouse's favorite charity.
Yep. It doesn't have to be those big flowery things that are kind of unexpected, but even the practical things that.
And I guess I keep saying spouse. I should say significant other. Right. Whoever that is in your life.
Right. Right. And or kids. I mean, you can apply this both ways.
And we'll talk about kids here at the end a little bit more.
Acts of service is another love language. And this love language is really about doing something for them to help them. So I referred to the laundry or folding the clothes, laundry, or the dishes or whatever. Taking on an act to help you with no intention of a reward in return, right? Like it's not about, I did this for you, so now you do this for me. It's just because you're setting aside, you know, their happiness is essentially becoming more important than yours at that moment.
And things that they talk about, you can actually print multiple note cards that say, today I will show my love for you by ... So if you're not an acts of service person, which my spouse, I would say, is, I should have those note cards ready. So at any given time, it reminds me that that's what they like. And it would be simple then to fill out a one word, you know, versus trying to come up with something. It talks about asking them, and I think this is an important one. If your requests to your mate come across as nags or put downs, try writing them in words that be less offensive to them. We kind of alluded to this at our last podcast, that when you show your love, especially through active service, I am more likely to get somebody to do an act of service for me if I compliment them laying on the couch while they're folding the clothes versus nagging about folding the clothes as I walk by. So how do you be thankful for what you have? It's that expected, unexpected again, and with an act of service to it.
Right.
I don't know. Tell that better because I kind of.
No, I think that all makes perfect sense. It's about reframing your mind and then figuring out how you can help that person help you.
Yes.
If that makes any sense, right? Like, how can
Is that manipulative? It feels like reverse psychology a little bit.
A little bit, but isn't that?
If it works.
I mean, that's marriage, right? I don't know. Okay. The next one and the last one that we'll talk about is physical touch.
Yeah.
Which this one cracks me up because I would say my husband is acts of service and probably physical touch, and physical touch is my least favorite. And it's hilarious because my kids, I would say, and we'll talk about how you can identify your kids as love languages here in a minute, but I would say most my kids have physical touch pretty close to the top too. And I can't stand it. Like they want to rub me. Like simple things. They want to sit here and rub
she's rubbing my hand right now.
They want to rub me with their thumb. It drives me crazy. It's like, don't just sit next to me. Don't rub me, you know?
Yes.
So there's definitely some give and take in our marriage and even with my children to show them.
Yeah.
Like I love hugs. I love kisses
of
my children and my spouse or my significant other, but I don't need to have them rub my feet or like rub my back or like a massage. No, thank you. But that's the kind of stuff that they crave. And so there's definitely some awareness in my brain that they need that.
Well, you know what's interesting beyond that the author kind of talks about that I hadn't thought about was it's not only about touch, but it's also about initiating it when their family and friends are around.
Yes.
They also need that public, I'm going to call it PDA.
Yep.
They need that public display of affection to show that you love them because you're touching them when somebody walks by or you're saying I love you in front of people.
Yep.
And actually, I don't know if it's how you're raised or whatever, but I actually find that to be a little bit uncomfortable.
Yep. Yeah, I do too. Which is probably why it comes up low.
Yeah.
On our love languages. And the other thing too, this doesn't have to be the hug and the kiss. It can be a pat on the shoulder.
Yep.
It can be a touch, you know, when you're talking to them. And, you know, those simple gestures that, heck, it can be wrestling with your little boy or a little girl who would like to wrestle on the carpet, you know, in the living room. Like that physical nearness is sometimes all it really is. It's not always a hug and a kiss.
The other thing, too, to remember is and I know you're really good about this, but our kids alone, endorphins get released from the brain when you hug. So it is important that we have that physical touch. And when we think about babies bonding and all that, like even if you're not a touch person, human life needs that. So I think for us who score lower in that, we have to make a conscious effort to make sure we're not turning off our kids or our spouse or other people. And it is crazy because I'm a big hugger. Yeah. I love hugging people as well, but physical touch is not high on my list. So I guess maybe one way to look at it is as we took the quiz, there's other things that trumped it so much more. Right. So maybe it's not that I'm not game for it. It's just not my top priority.
Yeah. Like without, you know, if I didn't get a chance to hug my husband today or this morning before I walked out the door, but I had an opportunity to talk to him on the phone and we were able to, you know, say I love you or whatever, that I would still feel solid connected to him as opposed to if I hadn't had a chance to talk to him, you know, or whatever. So I think it's the balance of it all. And in reality, we all need all of it. It's just which one do we need the most of to fill our emotional tank that we all have, right?
Yeah, so let's talk about the emotional tank. But before we go there, maybe let's explain a little bit that our kids have love languages too, right? Every human being has a love language. And how you identify it, and your kids might be different. I know my boys their love languages are different, so I parent differently because of that, because I know what they are. Yeah.
So if you have a child under 5, they probably don't have a dominant love language at this point, and quite honestly, we shouldn't try to figure it out. They really need all the love languages, like you just said. You know, physical touch is so important, but words of affirmation are really important, and they need quality time with people, and they need to be and to do and be part of acts of service and gift giving, to just learn how to be great human beings. And so do children on up. It's just that as they grow, they start to find one that fills their tank quicker, right? So 5 and up, you can probably begin to
5, 6
observe.
Concreteness comes in closer to 6, 6-ish, you know. And when we talk about that brain boost that we've talked about in a lot of our podcasts, remember, these are the critical years that our kids need everything. To feel secure in their world.
Right. So how do you start to identify it? Because certainly you're not going to have your 6-year-old or 7-year-old, really even 10, 12-year-old sit down and take a quiz. So the first thing would be just to observe them. How do they give love?
To you as a person or a sibling?
Right, or to the siblings. Observe them. Listen to what they're asking for. If they're saying, you know, Mommy, can you come play a game with me? Well, they're asking for quality time. Or, Mom, can I go to the store and get? They're asking for a gift. Like, listen. And, of course, they're going to ask for all kinds of different things. But can you pick up on a pattern over the course of time? The opposite is, well, not really the opposite, but the other thing to listen for is their complaints, right? Like, my children complain on occasion. Mom, you're always at work. Well, what are they missing? They're missing quality time, most likely. Now, granted, it might have been a week where I was on the road early and late, and so it was just this week. But if that's a continued pattern, then I need to reflect on that and think, well, when I am with them, how can I give them quality time?
And the other thing, too, remembering that always and never to kids is the way they talk.
Yes.
And so it could be a one-time occurrence, but it's always. So making sure we keep that in check, too, that it doesn't mean we revamp our whole life because our child says always and never, because that's part of their dialogue.
Right. And the other thing that you could do is you can simply ask them, you know, I ask my kids this often. You know, Mommy loves you, or Mommy loves you. And they'll say, yes. And I'll say, well, how do you know?
Yeah, how do you know?
You know, and it's interesting because one will say, because you say it all the time. And the other will say, because you snuggle with me. Well, they just told me 2 different things.
Yes, by saying it all the time.
Yep.
They
Words of
notice
affirmation.
it. Yep.
Because you snuggle with me.
Yep.
Physical touch could be quality time in that moment too. But you can hear it in what they're saying to you.
Yeah. And I would say too, sometimes I feel guilty because the way I put my kids to bed at night differs as well because of what each one needs. Yeah. My youngest child wants to be read to every night. We do a seek and find book, and then we have this really awesome book that I'll bring the next time we have a podcast, but it's a script every night, but it's kid-friendly from the Bible. He loves that. And then we talk about what it means. My oldest child wants me to come in, say, I love you, good night, give a hug, and walk out. Kiss. He does not want any additional time in the bedroom. Like, you know, so it's just, they're different, and I know that. And sometimes I feel guilty because I spend longer in one child's room than the other. But I also recognize that their needs are very different and always have been. They've been 2 separate kids or their love language since the day they were,
Yep.
well, maybe 5 or 6, not the day they were born, but when we started to
when you started
establish
to recognize it.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are a couple things that I want to talk about though in the children or in his 5 love languages for children book, because I think it's important to recognize that as kids grow, we need to be mindful of their age and their stage and their development, because we just said, up until age 5, we really need to make sure that we're giving all love languages, and really all throughout their life, we need to give all love languages. But how we do it and where we do it and when we do it, we need to be mindful of.
It's critical.
Yeah, so he talks about these fuel tanks that we all have, and when our fuel tank is full, we are more easily ready to accept criticism, to accept feedback of any kind, to be confident in who we are and what we're doing, and for kids to accept discipline and disappointment, which are all parts of life that we have to learn to accept. And when our emotional tank is full, we're in a place that we can accept that and move forward. But when it gets empty, we struggle. So it's really important to keep our emotional fuel tank full. So he talks about that this tank, as kids grow like into preteens and teens, that we need to continue to fill their tank even though they're not showing signs that they want us to fill it, right? So if they're shutting the door because they just want alone time or whatever preteens and teens do, that we still need to be saying and doing things to show them that we love them unconditionally, that we're not asking for them to come out and give us something in return, that we love them. Yeah. Even though this behavior isn't our favorite. Right. We love them through it anyway.
They won't necessarily, when we talk about that middle school brain again, 10 to 15, 16, they don't have an in to give you. Like they're trying to figure out who they are as a human being in life. Right. So we need to fill that tank positively, because they might not be getting positive sources elsewhere. Right. Right. So, which completely leads into the next thing about independent identity. Yeah. And so when we talk about like preteen and teen boys, I found this really interesting. That and he says, and you can agree, you can disagree, you can have somewhere in the middle. But it says mothers should never hug a son in the presence of his peers. That he is trying to find his own identity, and that could embarrass him, and it could also make him the brunt of jokes from his peers later. So I would say, but I mean, if he initiates a hug from you in front of his peers, like I think that could be different. I think so too.
Maybe it's a yes and, but being mindful of that. Yeah.
Middle school years are tough in high school for sure.
They are. The other really interesting thing, and we kind of grappled with this a little bit before we started recording, was this idea of preteen and teen girls, and how it's a natural thing for fathers to kind of withdraw their physical touch from their preteen and teen daughters. It just doesn't always feel comfortable, and even there are other love languages potentially too, words of affirmation, complimenting them, but that it is critical for these young ladies to have their fuel tanks or their energy tanks filled by a solid male role model. And he talks in here about how those young ladies are better able to stand up to peer pressure. They have a stronger self-identity, both intellectually and sexually, about who they are. They interact with males of their own age differently than their
and I would say more appropriately.
Yes,
more what we would consider as more appropriate,
and more confidently than their peers who maybe don't have that tank filled, that love tank filled by their fathers.
And I would say, let's go one step further. It doesn't even have to be a father.
Right.
It has to be a role model of a male. So it could be an uncle. It could be somebody's brother. I mean, there's multiple roles.
Right. Because if you're in a situation where the father, your child's father isn't in the picture, there are male role models out there.
Mentor programs.
To seek them out. It could be it could be a teacher who's a really solid male role model, a coach, an athletic coach, or a drama coach, or speech coach, or whatever that could play that role for them. But it's important to have that male role model.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that if they don't get that physical touch, potentially from a father or a grandfather, appropriate physical touch, and that tank full, that they may actually seek a male to do that for them, which could then be inappropriate potentially. So just really thought-provoking, really interesting. I mean,
the middle school years to me, for boys and girls both, are so critical for child development, but for relationship with parents and for what their exposure is and that sense of belonging. I mean, I know I'm not trying to go down a rabbit hole, but it's just such a critical time that we are involved in our kids, that we have compassion and caring, that we don't ride them too much, but we ride them enough to know what they're doing. And it's that fine balance of trying to figure it all out. Yeah. And I certainly don't have it figured out, but I'm learning as I go.
Well, we've been having lots of conversations over the last couple of weeks about learning as we go.
Oh, and inappropriate things that our kids are doing that you think, it astounds you.
One of these days we'll share that too. Yeah. But for today, we're just grappling with it all ourselves and trying to figure it out. Yep. The other thing that I think is important, and I'm thankful we have the love languages for the marriage and for a relationship, and I'm hopeful that, if you have children, even if you don't have children, that you go on and take the quiz and find out what your love language is and your significant others. And if you do have children in the mix, it's really important to demonstrate and model that healthy interaction in the marriage in all the love languages, because we really are the role model for them as to how we show and accept love. And it starts there. And totally, the reality of being happy, but also the reality of teaching your kids conflict resolution. For sure. Because kids that grow up in homes that don't demonstrate that struggle with relationships because they don't know how to have conflict in a relationship. So all of those are equally as important. Yep. So we would encourage you, if you haven't had a chance to read the 5 love languages, any of them. Yeah, they're wonderful. I think he's got a whole series, like in the workplace. I think he's got anger management stuff. He's got a lot out there. There's an anger quiz on his website too that maybe we need to monitor or to take. But anyway, I think there's all kinds of things that can be learned. And as I was sitting here reading through this book, I was like, I need to read it again. Oh, I've read it twice, and even tonight we just kind of skimmed it. Yeah. Agreed. It's a great book. Great book. I actually was telling Tasha that I can't remember who was telling me this, but there is a marriage counselor out there that uses these books only for the basis of counseling. And I said to Tasha, kind of half joking, what an easy marriage session that would be to be the therapist of. Read chapter 1, come back, let's discuss it. Okay, read chapter 2, come back, let's discuss it. You wouldn't have to have any strategies because you'd let the book do all your strategies. Exactly. So the next time you guys get invited to a wedding, pick up the book. Great gift. Give it as a gift. Yeah, great gift. A lot to be learned. So, yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. Got through this crazy life. Head on over to iTunes. Wherever you listen to us. Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play. Yep. Wherever. Leave us a rating and a review. Yeah. And until next time, love your simple soul.
Thank you for listening in. Head on over to iTunes or Google Play to give Simple Soul a rating and review. Show notes and resources can be found on Facebook, Twitter, and our blog. Feel free to comment and share your thoughts. Also, like Simple Soul on Facebook and follow on Twitter and become part of their tribe. Love your simple soul.